Hey, I'm Bacon, and this is the third in a series of videos about the innovations of Traveler. In this one, I'm going to talk about damage tracking. And this time I want to begin with the pre-existing landscape. So, of the 7 games that were published and widely available before Traveler, 4 of them, Dungeons & Dragons, Empire the Petal Throne, Metamorphosis Alpha, all TSR games, and Bunnies and Burrows, used hit points for tracking character damage. Dungeons & Dragons and Petal Throne derived hit points from class and level, while Metamorphosis Alpha and Bunnies and Burrows derived hit points from the Constitution stat. Bunnies and Burrows further layered a wound level system on top of hit points, and crossing certain wound level thresholds as you progressively lost hit points would incur penalties to various rolls. Both Tunnels and Trolls and Boot Hill, these are 2 additional games of the time, used your rolled Constitution stat as actual hit points at a 1-for-1 rate. So if you had a Constitution of 12, you had 12 hit points. Taking damage reduced your actual Constitution score directly. If your con reached 0, you dead. Unlike Bunnies and Burrows, which attempted to account for physical hardship as you became more and more injured by crossing wound thresholds, Tunnels and Trolls stuck to the now, more traditional D&D approach of allowing the full range and capacity of character action completely unimpeded so long as you had a single hit point left. However, any Constitution check that needed to be rolled would always use the current quote-unquote damaged Constitution score, assuming you'd suffered damage that hadn't been healed yet. So outside of this, there wasn't an immediate impact to character performance, and provided you could heal up before a con check was called for, you may never even really feel the effects. Boot Hill's approach was to again use the Constitution score directly as your hit points, but overlaid on top of this was a roll for hit location, legs and arms, torso, or head, and then provided you did enough damage to that location, you would roll on a critical injury table. Getting shot in the head was always a roll on the critical injury table, even if you did the lowest possible amount of damage. And getting hit in the head, as getting hit in the head could yield instant death, and I'm sure that comes as no surprise. If you didn't outright kill your opponent with a headshot or otherwise remove them from the fight with other serious injuries, reducing their constitution to 0 would kill them. The last widely available RPG that was around prior to GDW publishing Traveler was On Guard. And On Guard was a swashbuckling duelist theme RPG, and it was published by GDW immediately prior to Traveler. It used stamina to track fatigue and damage, and was directly rolled during character generation. When stamina reached 0, the character was incapacitated or dead depending on the stakes of the duel. And while On Guard does not use critical tables like Boot Hill does, sometimes a single attack could do enough damage, usually half of the character's stamina or more, to cause a mortal wound and kill outright if medical attention is not rendered quickly, even without reducing stamina to 0. More than in the other games at the time, On Guard relied on referee ruling for adjudicating these things. Additionally, certain combat maneuvers checked to see how much stamina the character currently had. So if a maneuver is looking for 12 stamina, and the character only has 8 after suffering 4 points of damage, then that specific maneuver can no longer be used until stamina has been healed. So it's an abstracted hit points tracker, but by another name with an added tactical layer. So given what I've described so far, it could be argued that Traveler was not the first or even the second game to dispense with the concept of hit points. However, what it was the first major RPG to eliminate the abstraction of hit points entirely for PCs and NPCs. So, instead of tracking a pool of hit points, Traveler used damage to a character's physical attributes, strength, dexterity, and endurance. When a character takes damage, it is directly deducted from those core characteristics. And I'm going to switch over to the actual Traveler rulebook now to read what each of these statistics governed. Strength is the efficiency of various blows and swings, but not of shots. It's dependent on personal strength. The weapons table indicates both a required strength level and an advantageous strength level for all blade and brawling weapons. A character using a specific weapon who does not have strength equal to or greater than the required strength level for that weapon is subject to the negative dice modifier stated in the weapon table. For example, a character with strength 5 does not meet the required strength of 7 for the cutlass, and if using the weapon is subject to a DM of -2. There's also a section in here about strength overages. If you exceed the strength requisite by a certain number, we don't need to read that. Dexterity is the accuracy of shots, and the accuracy of shots is dependent on the dexterity of the character firing the weapon. In a manner similar to the effect of strength on swings and blows, the weapons table indicates the required and advantageous dexterity levels for guns and shows the positive and negative dice modifiers which should be applied to the basic throw to hit. Endurance. This one's complicated. The number of blows and swings which may be made and their impact is dependent on endurance. For this purpose, all blows and swings may be classed into one of 4 classes. There's Surprise, Combat, Weakened, and Special. I'm not reading Surprised and Special. It doesn't matter for this video. Combat blows and swings are the ordinary attacks made in the course of battle after surprise is lost. A character may make a number of combat blows and swings which does not exceed his endurance. A character with endurance 9 may make 9 combat blows. Once this allowance has been used up, the character may make no more combat blows until he has rested for at least 30 minutes. Weakened blows and swings are those attacks made after the combat blow and swing allowance has been used up. Each weakened blow or swing is subject to the negative dice modifier indicated in the weapons table. Any number of weakened blows and swings may be made. To conserve strength, a character may elect to make any blow or swing weakened and thus not have it counted against his endurance limit. Additionally, note that a character is allowed only a specific number of swings and blows by his endurance characteristic, and that only 1 blow or swing may be made per combat round. The number of blows and swings is based on the individual's endurance. Blah, 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 blah. So there is some ambiguity here with regard to exactly how to treat the reduction in endurance over the course of combat. The original Little Black Book of Traveler, the Little Black Books that was the original Traveler publication, were ambiguous in several areas that saw a bunch of technically house rules, but they came to prominence in adjudication. For example, well, we'll get there, but I'm going to name this specifically as the way in which damage is handled. And I'll stop here, and I won't go into those other methods because I think that this is the best way to highlight the direct damage to attributes as a non-abstracted damage tracker. So that's why I'm going with this particular method. I do recognize that there are other ways that rules have been interpreted. There are other ways that rules have been updated over, in the intervening years. I think it even runs different in Mongoose Traveler 2e at this moment. So I do recognize all of that, and that is all very fair, but this is best to highlight the point that I'm making here. So how does the damage work? How is it applied? So when a character is injured through combat or hazards, damage applied to the three core stats that we just read. It's applied in specific ways according to the book, sometimes at random, sometimes the player chooses, but we don't need to review that here. When damage is applied, the effects are felt immediately. Endurance, as I read, governs the number of normal, called combat swings and blows you can perform in combat without incurring penalties. So taking damage to endurance hastens the application of the penalties. Strength governs the type of melee weapons you use without a penalty, and dexterity governs the types of ranged weapons you can use without penalties. So applying the damage directly to any one of these stats has an immediate and weighty effect. Suddenly, you're swinging while exhausted, more likely to miss than land a blow, or the blade becomes over heavy in your hands, or you become clumsy and less likely to draw a bead. If any one characteristic is reduced to 0, the character is unconscious. If 2 attributes are reduced to 0, the character is seriously wounded, and if all 3 are reduced to 0, the character dies. Again, there's some ambiguity regarding whether or not death comes after the second or third attribute as it's reduced to 0. I went with 3, again, to better illustrate the system. There's ambiguity. I expect that someone will likely mention this in the comments, which is totally cool. I do want to make sure that I stayed up front that I do understand this ambiguity exists. Healing, recovery involves slowly regaining points over the 3 attributes. We don't really need to go into healing here. Healing is an entirely separate thing from damage tracking. So why did Mark Miller decide to go with this system? He and the other creators wanted a hard science fiction game, and abstract pools of hit points were considered too fantastical. This system reflected how injury weakens specific aspects of a person. It also was for the simplification and integration. The model aligns with attribute-based tasks. You're not tracking a separate stat like hit points. Damage directly impacts your ability to perform actions. And also lethality. Traveler leans into the lethality of space travel and combat. The system is unforgiving, reinforcing the sense that even minor skirmishes can have deadly consequences. So Traveler was the first fully realized commercial RPG to integrate a characteristic or attribute-based damage model into its core mechanics, dispensing with the abstracted damage tracker altogether. The loss of attributes is concrete and immediate. You get weaker, you get slower, and you get less accurate right from the first point of damage. Thank you so much for listening. There is more in store in this particular series. And I'll see you in the next one. Please do like and subscribe. I hope you're enjoying, and I'll see you all. Take care.